Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoy this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience.
Selena lived in a small village and was raised by her mother and father. She had always watched how a woman cared for a man, how she supported him when he was not well. The girl always knew that she too would have a big family. She would get married, have children. Her husband would build her a house, and they will be very happy there. "Selena, what are you thinking about again?" her mother told her. "I was thinking how lucky you and Daddy are." She looked at the woman with her clear blue eyes. "Yes, I am very lucky to have your father." Her mother came up to her and hugged her. The woman had always wanted to have a big family, to have many children, but God didn't give her that. After she gave birth to Selena, she got sick and never got pregnant again. "Here I am," my father came into the house. "Daddy." The girl ran to him. The whole family gathered around the table. It was their tradition. There they talked, told each other about what had happened during the day. "Mom, tell me, how do you choose someone who will love you and always support you?" Selena asked and turned to her mother. At that moment, the girl was 12 years old. "You know, daughter, when you meet him, your heart will tell you that he is the one." Her mother sighed and moved closer to her father. "I want so much to meet someone like you, Dad," Selena confessed to him. "You will, at your age," the father grinned. The daughter only smiled back. She trusted her parents. She went to school. Every day they went there with the guys. Afterwards, if it was warm outside, they would go for a walk, always inventing something. In the winter, they'd ride their briefcases down the hill. It was fun. When Selena was 15 years old, she decided that she had a year left before graduation. She had to think about where she would go. "Would you go to the city?" her mother asked her. Even if I go, then I will go back," told her daughter. "Come back, there is a lot of work here. People need bread," her father told her. Selena planned to become a bookkeeper or a cashier. She was very attracted to numbers, and she knew how to handle them. But fate turned a little differently. When the girl was in the 10th grade, she met, as it seemed to her, the very person who would be with her always as she dreamed. That day, she was leaving school, tripped on the wooden porch, and flew forward. If she had fallen, her knees and elbows would have definitely had to heal. But she was picked up by someone's strong arms. She turned around, her heart pounding frantically in her chest, and the guy was looking at her and smiling. Her long braids reached almost to the ground as she hung in his arms. "Thank you so much," she said and blushed. "Can you imagine what would have happened to you if you'd fallen?" He looked at the ground near the porch. There was a lot of rubble. "Yes, when I stumbled I had already imagined what would happen and how my mother would scold me." Now they were both laughing. Selena was on her feet, adjusting her uniform. "Are you going home?" the young man asked her. "Yes," she said, and walked down the road. "Wait, I'll walk you out." He caught up with her in 2 steps. "Where are you from here? I've never seen you before." The girl asked him. "My parents recently moved here. I was in the army, so I came here. I didn't want to leave them alone. I need to help with the house and garden," he said. "Oh, so your parents are our new neighbors?" she guessed. "About a year ago, a family moved in, a family Selena's mother was very good friends with." "I guess, and you're Selena?" he asked her. "Yes," she laughed in response. "And my name is Harvey." At first he wanted to extend his hand to her, but then he thought it would be awkward, since only men do that. They walked further to their houses, which did stand in the neighborhood. Harvey promised that they would come to visit them in the evening. "I have to ask my parents," she said. "What to ask?" "We will visit you in the neighborhood. They often come to us." He was surprised. "Okay, come on, see you later." She waved at him and went into the gate. Her face was burning. Her heart was beating fast, and her mother noticed at once that something was wrong with her daughter. "Selena, what happened to you? Why are you like this?" she asked her from the doorstep. "Mom, I met him today," she told her. "Who him?" The woman didn't understand. "Well, the one. Remember you told me that when I met him, I would feel it in my heart. And so today, when I almost fell, he caught me," said the daughter confusedly. "I don't understand anything. Sit down at the table, have lunch, then you will tell everything in order," showed her mother that everything is already ready. Selena ate. She went to her room. For some reason, she wanted to write a poem. The girl sat down at her desk, wrote the first 2 lines, and then nothing else came into her head. In the evening, as promised, Harvey and his parents came. The woman was glad to see them. She let them in, and they sat down at the table. Colin's mother had baked a very tasty potato pie, and everyone ate it with tea. And then the guy suggested to the girl to go outside and take a little walk. That evening they walked around the village, talking about everything for a long time. "Harvey, didn't you notice that when you caught me, it was like a spark between us?" Selena said to him, though she was ashamed of these words. "You wouldn't believe it. I was far away from that place, but it was like I felt something and I was drawn there." They stopped. "Will you come tomorrow?" she asked him hopefully. "Will we be friends?" It was obvious that the guy was also embarrassed. After these words, Selena was not so much shy of the young man anymore. He walked her to the gate, where his parents were just coming out. They all said their goodbyes and went home. "Mom, did you see him?" Selena said to the woman. "Yes, of course I did, and I saw the way you look at him, and how his eyes shine." She kissed her on the top of her head. Selena continued to study. Harvey met her every day after school, walked her home. In the evening, they would walk and talk about the future. "I was going to go to the city after school," she told him. "What's there to do in the city?" The guy didn't understand. "I don't know. Everyone wants to go there. And I also wanted to, of course. Then I promised my mom to come back." For some reason now she was ashamed of these words. "I won't change your mind. If you want to go, I'll follow you. But I think there'll be plenty of work here." He pointed to the office. "I know that without you," Selena thought. When she was home in the evening, she asked her mother if she could talk to Aunt Betty, who worked at the village hall. Maybe she could get her a job somewhere. Her mother, of course, promised that she would do it, but first she had to wait until the educational process was over. Before the exams, the girl was very worried, but Harvey was always there for her. He studied together with her, in some things prompted, where he helped. Selena already knew everything, and when everything happened, she was not even worried. "You're going to be my wife," Harvey whispered discreetly in her ear at graduation. Selena's cheeks flared. She turned sharply toward him. "What are you talking about?" she also whispered quietly. "Why, we're adults. Why not register our relationship?" He was amazed that she didn't want to do that. "But you have to wait a little bit, because I'm not old enough yet," she told him. "I'm ready to wait for you for the rest of my life." He hugged her. After high school, Selena started working part-time at the post office. She enjoyed sorting through newspapers and magazines and delivering letters to the locals. She was on good terms with everyone. She was not rude to anyone. She smiled. Harvey was glad his girlfriend was like that. When she turned 18, she and Harvey fulfilled their dream. The whole village was at the wedding. "My dears, though you are still so young, I congratulate you." My mother was crying for some reason. "Mummy, why tears in her eyes? Today is such a happy day," Selena told her. It was just a happy day. Everyone was happy, having fun. Harvey had asked the chairman for a plot of land for a house before the wedding, and now he was continuing the construction. The boy wanted the house to be big, strong, just like their family would be. Selena had gone to work, as usual, first thing in the morning. She was sitting in a semi-dark room going through letters when she felt a heaviness in her stomach. The girl immediately thought of a child, although no one had ever told her about it. When her older coworker came in, she decided to ask her, "Nancy, tell me, here is my stomach pulse. Can it be pregnancy?" She asked the woman. "Well, Olga, you give just a stomach prick, and she immediately thinks that she is pregnant," laughed the woman. But the girl was sure of it. She wanted children so much that she couldn't believe that it didn't work out. At home, she told her husband everything, and he, as well as Nancy, was distrustful of his wife's words. But when a few months passed, Selena's words were confirmed. She was indeed pregnant. It was such happiness, but this child was not destined to be born. Once Selena was walking to one of the houses for work, and Evan rode by on a cart. For some unknown reason, the horse bucked and sped off. Selena was in its path. Evan, as best he could, didn't want to hurt the girl, but he failed. She didn't realize how it happened, but a moment later, the girl was lying unconscious on the side of the road. "You killed the girl! You killed the girl!" Evan shouted. He still couldn't stop the mad horse. The people who heard this immediately ran that way. They saw the girl, started to lift her up, and took her to a doctor. The local medical center couldn't do anything, so they took her to the hospital. Yes, she lost the baby, but that wasn't the most important thing right now. "Tell me, what's wrong with her?" Harvey begged tearfully. "She has very serious injuries. The doctor at the hospital couldn't say anything clear yet. She needs time, patience, and good care. I'll do anything for her." My husband was really ready for it. After the conversation with the doctor, he sat in the ward and never left his wife's side. Her mother came to visit, her father visited, but her husband was always there. When Selena regained consciousness, he fed her with a spoon, helped her to get up. She was so sweet and small and beautiful. Selena's face had taken a bit of a hit in the fall, and now there was a large scar on one cheek. But it seemed to Harvey that this scar only made her prettier. He complimented her and supported her in everything, and she only smiled and covered her face. They returned to the village a few months later. Selena limped, but no one noticed. At night, the girl cried. "Come on, my darling." Harvey stroked her head. "Harvey, what about our baby? That's what hurt the most. We'll have more children. Don't worry, he could always support her." "I want to go to the doctor to find out why I can't get pregnant." Her mother came to the house. "There's nothing for you to do there, in this town," she said. "Then what?" Selena was getting desperate. "So, today you and I will go to your grandmother Maddie, in the neighboring village," her mother told her and took her daughter's hand to support her. "What can she do, your Maddie?" Selena really didn't believe that some otherworldly force could help her get pregnant. She remembered that a few years ago, her husband had told her about a baby from the orphanage, but she didn't want to think about it yet. Selena agreed with her mother, and they drove together to a neighboring village. It was indeed said about Maddie that she healed people, helped them in different life situations. The woman and the girl entered the house. Selena immediately saw that Maddie was sitting at the table. She wasn't that old, though everyone called her a grandmother. "So, what took you, wench, so long to come to me?" she asked her. "I don't know." The girl was confused. "Come on, come in, I'll solve your problem." Grandmother took out some herbs, whispered something on them, smoked, gave Selena to drink some tincture. After that, she told her that everything would be fine. Selena left Matrona's grandmother. She looked at her mother and smiled. "Well, did she help you?" The woman spent all that time on the street outside the house. "Yeah, right, they were coming home." Harvey was looking forward to it. He still loved his wife and was willing to do anything for her. A year passed, 2, 3, 5. There was no change in their family. One day, Selena decided to make kvass. She added bread and breadcrumbs to the container, and when she began to add the leaven, she felt so bad that she even had to run outside. "What's wrong?" Her husband ran out to help her. "I don't know. It got so bad." She looked at him. Harvey saw that Selena was very pale. "Why don't we go to the medic?" He suggested she go. When they arrived, the man who was supposed to help Selena smiled. "Well, Selena, your dreams have come true," he told her. Everyone in the village knew how much she wanted children and that she couldn't do it. It couldn't be. Selena almost fainted. Indeed, she was pregnant. Harvey carried his wife in his arms. Now he wouldn't let her go anywhere. She couldn't even go to the store. He did everything for her. They went to the hospital before the appointed time. Everything had to be perfect. The whole pregnancy, the woman felt good. Nothing was going to happen. She was sure of it. Her stomach began to pull in the evening. Selena told the doctor about it. She was so looking forward to meeting her firstborn. When the baby's cry sounded in the room, the doctor congratulated Selena on the birth of her baby, a son. The woman lay and cried. After that, she did not leave the baby for a minute. When they returned home, the whole village celebrated the event. "Now I am the happiest person in the world," she told Harvey. There was a lot of crying in the house, but Mom was always there. She had waited so long for this moment that she tried to stretch the time while the baby was small. Selena loved to sit by the crib and tell stories and poems to the baby. The one, when he heard the mother's voice, quieted down. After the birth of her first child, not even a year passed before Selena felt sick again. She turned to her husband, looked at him with big eyes. "It can't be," he said. "Harvey, I'm so happy. Was it really Grandma Maddie who helped me then, or was it just self-hypnosis?" She hugged him. "I don't know what it was, but I'm happy too." He held her close. And this time it went exactly the same way as the first time. Harvey did everything himself. He didn't let his wife do any of the work. She was only taking care of the baby and preparing for the second one. She was in the hospital again, though nothing bothered her, but she was worried about her son, how he would be without her. She would sooner give birth and go home, she said to her neighbors in the ward. "And how did you just decide? The first is still small, and you are all ready for the second." Young girls were surprised. "I've dreamed about it all my life, and now everything is coming true," Selena said quietly. She already knew, when she started to feel a little tingle in her lower abdomen, that it was starting. She still hadn't forgotten after the first time what to do, so there were no problems. And this time the boy showed up. "There you go, Barry. You'll soon see your brother Alex," Mommy was telling the little lump in the maternity ward, and Harvey was walking under the windows. He didn't want to be shown his son or anything. He was just happy for his family. There were 4 of them in the house now. Alex was already taking confident steps, talking, and Barry was lying in his crib. Grandmother often came to visit her grandchildren, but she could not hold them in her arms for a long time because she was sick. No sooner had they rejoiced at the birth of their second child than there was grief in the family. Selena's father died. It was very painful, but she did not get upset and did not cry, afraid that the milk would disappear. After that, her mother moved into their house. There was enough room for everyone, and the extra hands came in handy. "I wish we had another girl," Harvey said to Selena at night. "Oh, we've had enough of 2, thank God for that." She looked in the corner where the icon stood. "A girl would be nice," Harvey insisted. Selena was happy. Alex went to kindergarten. Barry was in his grandmother's care. Selena wanted to go out to work. Harvey didn't mind. He always agreed with his wife. But Selena had to work just 6 months because after that time she felt pregnant again. Why didn't it happen before? She wondered. Apparently it was necessary that you had to have children now, her mother told her. Yes, if only 10 years earlier, the woman sighed. But she didn't want to do anything. If God gives a child, it must come into the world. And again, she was in the same hospital. The doctor smiled when he saw her. "You come here often," he joked. "As long as I can, I will give birth," the patient calmly answered him. Nothing new happened. Still the same room, the long corridor on which she walked when everything began. And for the 3rd time Selena had a son named Billy. The baby was born painful. but the doctor convinced the woman that it was not worth worrying too much. But Selena was still very upset and let him be disabled, but that it would not affect his life in any way. There was another family member in the house. The older boys were already helping their father with some things. They were doing something funny, stomping their feet, eating at the table. Father and mother were only happy about it. One day Alex came home from kindergarten with a broken nose. What happened? His mother didn't understand. It's nothing. The boy waved his hands, playing with the guys. The woman saw that she was raising very good sons. She realized that she had to give them education, show and tell them everything that she herself knows how to do. Harvey was directly involved in this as well. When the boys were in school, his father told and showed them how to drive a car, a tractor. They studied some details, all of which could only be marveled at, which is what Selena did. Her mother was already very old. She had been lying down for a long time. The woman took care of her, but she too was gone at some point. Selena cried. Her children and husband supported her in everything. But there was no time to grieve for a long time. It was necessary to work, bring up children and everything else. While studying at school, the boys planned to stay in the village, not to go anywhere, to help their father and mother, as well as their collective farm. But the older the boys got, the more often their thoughts changed. And now Alex had finished school, and it was necessary to go to serve in the army. His mother was very upset about it. "Alex, be careful there," she asked him. It was not a peaceful time. In some places there was a fierce war. "Oh, mother, don't worry. Everything will be all right," he promised her. The boy left. He wrote letters about how and where his days were going. Told about the new friends he met. The whole family would write him back. His mother, too, would post everything that happened during the days that there were no letters. She was very worried and waiting for her son. Alex was coming back from the army. The train was stopping in the city. When the guy got out there on the platform, he decided to walk around a little. A few friends came with him, and he stayed with them. "Well, Alex, maybe in a cafe. Let's meet some girls," his friend offered him. "I don't mind," Alex said. He was in the city not often, only when he and his father came to the store. So now he was interested in everything. With a friend they came to some cafe. There were really young girls there. They were brightly painted and dressed the same way. Alex liked it all so much, he walked over to one of them when they had been sitting for a while. "Hi," he said to the girls. "Go to your boyfriend." One of them turned around. "And I wanted to meet you." He was naive. After not much persuasion, the girls finally agreed to meet. They moved to the table with the guys, and the evening continued with the four of them. "You're not like the rest of the city," Katie said as Leosha walked her home. "What's that? Handsome?" he'd assumed. "Fuck you." She waved her hands at him. Alex was proud of himself. It was the first time he was walking down the street with a girl. There were girls in the village, but they were all friends. And now here he was, he met her, and now he was walking her home. "Tomorrow I will come," he asked her at the entrance. "Come." She opened the door and walked into the darkness. The guy was returning to his friend, thought that here he would linger for more than one day. "Victor, why? I'll live with you," he asked his friend. "If you want, you can," he shrugged. After that, Alex started dating Katie. He wrote to his mother in the village that he stayed in the city, but she beckoned him to come home. "Katie, will you come with me?" he told her. "What's there to do in your village?" It was obvious she'd never go there, never live there. "I'll introduce you to my parents. Tell them we're going to live in the city," he insisted. She agreed only after 2 weeks. Victor, where Alex lived, had already hinted to him several times that it was time to move out. He promised him that as soon as they returned from the village, he would get a job and figure out what to do about the housing. "Here now we will come. You will see what a huge house I have, brothers, mother, and father," he told her. "Oh, what haven't I seen there?" She looked away out the window. The girl liked the young man, But living in the village was not her story. She wanted to be in the city. When they arrived, Selena immediately saw what kind of person her son's fiancée was. She was very brightly painted, wearing a short skirt. Her blouse barely covered her stomach. "Alex, where did you find her?" his mother asked him. "Mom, stop it," he soothed her. But the woman didn't want to stop. She had lived life, knew that with this girl her son would not have a good family. While Alex and Katie were visiting his mother, a summons came that Barry was also drafted into the army. "How could it be? I didn't have time to meet one, and already the second one should be sent," the woman lamented. But Barry was ready for it. He looked at his brother and wanted him to be the same. In general, boys from childhood repeated everything after each other. The send-off was over. Barry left for the army. Alex and Katie went into town. There, the boy went to get a job in the police. They took him in, even gave him a place to live. Now, he and Katie had a place to live. "So, my darling, marry me." He brought her home a ring. "How long did you think about it?" She looked at him. "What's the matter?" Alex didn't understand. "How long have I been waiting for this ring?" She hugged him. "My mother suggested we get married in the village. There's more space there. All the relatives and acquaintances. But Katie didn't want it. She wanted her wedding to be in a restaurant, to be upscale." Harvey and Selena and Billy came along. Of course, it wasn't a big deal, but her son got married anyway. "Mom, why are you so serious?" Alex asked her. "You know I don't like your Katie," she told him after the wedding. "It's not for you to live with her." Was the son offended? "Okay." The woman wanted to hug Alex, but he went to the bride. Selena wiped her tears and went to her husband too. The young people began to live in the very apartment that Alex was allotted from work. They were happy. Alex worked. He was praised by his superiors. And after a while, the husband came home with bad news. "Nin, don't worry," he said to his wife. "What happened?" She looked at him. "I'm being sent to a hot spot," he replied. "How can that be?" She came over and hugged him. "Now everyone goes there in order, so don't worry, I will definitely come back." He was afraid because already several of his comrades had gone there and did not return. "Will you tell your mother?" she asked. He knew she would be very upset, but there was no way out. He could not notify the most dear woman. That same weekend they went to the village to tell his parents. Selena, as soon as she heard it, immediately started sobbing. She didn't understand why he had to do it, putting himself in danger. But the guy said that a lot of people had already left work, so it was his turn. Alex left. Katie stayed home alone. Some time passed, and the girl found out that she was pregnant. What was to do at home alone? She did not understand. The girl put aside all her pride and the rest, got ready and went to Selena's village. "Hello." She stood on her mother-in-law's doorstep. "Come in if you're here," she told her. "You know, Alex is gone, and we're going to have a baby soon." She touched her stomach. Selena clapped her hands. "I'm going to be a grandmother soon." There was a lot to be happy about, but there was also a lot to be happy about, because one son was in a hot spot, and the other was in the army. Katie decided to stay with Selena, who was helping her with everything. "I'm sorry for the way I acted before," the girl told her. "It's all right. All young people are like that." The woman smiled. She had grown fond of her daughter-in-law, and now she didn't seem the same as before. There was no news from Alex at all. The women were very worried about it. They checked with him at work, but they were kept in the dark. Katie was very upset and cried a lot. "Are you crying?" Her mother came into her room. You know, her hormones were playing up, and now she was going through so much, she didn't believe Alex would come back. Katie was called to the station. When the uniformed man saw her rounded belly, he couldn't say a word. Talk already, she couldn't stand it. It looked like she was going to faint. "Your husband died heroically," he told her. "What?" Katie's eyes widened. She staggered. Please calm down. He handed her a glass of water. What did you just say to me? She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Please excuse me, but I had to tell you that. The policeman didn't know how to justify himself. Katie sat down on the chairs that stood there. She was in such shock that she couldn't even cry. Various thoughts were running through her mind, the main one being how to inform her mother. How would she react to this terrible news? But it had to be done. Alex's colleague wrote down the address where the body would be delivered, promised it would be done. After that, he saluted and went to his office. Katie had to go back to the village, but she didn't know how to do it. She went to the train station, bought a ticket, but not for the near future, but for the evening. Until then, she wondered how she would bring bad news to her husband's house. When she arrived at the village, she stood for a long time near the gate, not daring to go in. Suddenly, she saw Harvey walking down the street. "Katie, what are you standing there for?" he asked her. "I don't know how to get in," she replied. "Is something wrong?" He tensed up because he saw his sister-in-law's eyes crying. "Yes," she answered quietly, and didn't know how to say the next words. "That's it. Let's go to the house. You'll tell us everything there." He took her under his arm and led her into the gate. Katie sat at the table, eating no food, touching nothing, just staring at one point. "Why were you called in?" Selena was in the kitchen. "Alex is dead," she answered simply, still staring at the spot she was staring at. "What?" Selena felt like her heart had stopped. "I also reacted there," the girl replied. The mother sat down on a chair. It was as if the house was short of air. Harvey handed her a glass of water. He too could not take in this information, but held on. When the zinc coffin was brought to the house, then everyone believed it had really happened. Alex was buried by the whole village. Many nice words were said, but it couldn't help his mother. Katie was taken away by ambulance from the event. "I don't know how to live without him," the wife said, when she returned to her mother-in-law's house. "Kathy, this is our shared grief, and we will get through it together." They sat hugging each other in the kitchen. "I should write to Barry," Billy said one day. "Don't you dare," his mother turned on him. Why, he'd have to know his brother was gone, the boy wondered. He's there now, and they might take him there too. And he was repeating everything after his brother. "He'll go. They'll bring him back too," said the mother, not knowing that her words would be prophetic. Kathy gave birth to a baby girl. It was such a joy for Harvey, for he had longed so much for a daughter. He never left her side. "I should probably go into town," she told her husband's parents. "What are you going to do there?" "Stay here. It's so nice. Get a job somewhere. We'll look after our granddaughter," Selena begged her. "I can't stay here. Everything reminds me of him." Katie began to cry, but she stayed anyway. Selena got her a job at the same post office where she'd once worked. She and Harvey stayed at home and only took care of their granddaughter. It was time for Barry to come home from the army. He also came with a girl. It is not known where they met. The family sat down at the table. When the boy learned about what had happened to his brother, he cried. "Why didn't you write me?" he shouted. "Son, believe me, it was necessary." His mother came up to him. They met his girlfriend. Her name was Ekaterina. She lived near the place where the son served. That's where they met. "If you want to live separately, you can go to your grandmother's house," Selena offered them. Barry and Catherine agreed to the offer. They were now living in Selena's mother's house. At first, everything was fine between them, but more and more often Catherine began to go to the city. She was there for several days. Barry was nervous. Once the girl left once again, she was not there for a long time. Barry even went to look for her, but could not find her. The guy was very psychotic and decided that there was nothing more for him to do here. He went to the military enlistment office and asked to be contracted. "Barry, no," cried his mother, and knelt in front of him when he told her this. "I will go and avenge Alex," he said. "Please don't," Katie joined the woman. "Why are you so afraid for me? Nothing will happen to me." He was smug, Selena knew there was no changing her son's mind. She was glad that Billy had been exempted from all this for health reasons. He wasn't going into the army. Barry left home too, and soon Kathy moved to town. So there we are, you and me alone in our old age, Selena said to her husband. What about me? Billy looked at them. And you, son, you're with us. His mother hugged him. For some reason, she felt so sad that she couldn't put it into words. Lately, the woman had been crying a lot. She didn't understand how such a happy family could fall apart so quickly. Don't be sad, Selena. There will be a holiday on our street, Harvey told her. But her mother could not help it. Tears rolled from her eyes. Barry had stopped writing. She worried about her son. You know him. He hasn't written to us since the army, Harvey reassured her. Mom, Dad, stop grieving. Meet Aurora, my fiancée. As if at a concert, Billy presented his girlfriend. Jesus, Billy, where are you going? Mom got up from her chair. Why? Everybody's allowed and I'm not. He wondered. She knew Aurora from childhood. The girl was 2 years younger than her son. She was in contact with her parents, so the girl was warmly welcomed into the house. Every day Billy walked with her, and his parents were happy for him. Well, and you said, sick, and look, his father was also happy that his son had found a bride. Billy did not wait long. After a short time of their communication, he proposed to the girl. The parents on both sides approved of the marriage. The wedding was played by the whole village. Although the mother was not so cheerful, but she tried not to show it. When everyone was about to go home, Selena was approached by a girl who worked at the post office. She took her hand and looked her straight in the eye. What? Selena tensed. Barry, she said. Barry what? The mother didn't understand. Missing, the girl muttered. I don't understand. The mother sat down on a chair. Missing. A telegram came. The postal worker explained. It came today. She handed her a small piece of paper. Selena looked at the girl for a long time and then closed her eyes with her hands and began to just howl. Tears were no longer enough to mourn this grief. Selena, what's the matter with you? Harvey ran up to her at once, but she went on. Then the man spoke to the girl and she told him everything. They went home in silence. Nobody knew what to say to each other. We won't bury her, the mother said at once. Bury who? Harvey didn't understand. No one. He's gone, and let him be gone. He's gone, and he doesn't write letters, she answered her husband. It seemed as if his wife had gone mad, but he said nothing. Harvey tried to keep his cool, but inner worries made themselves felt. One day the man became ill. He was taken to the hospital, and from there he already came lying down. It was even more difficult for Selena now. She was worried about everything that had happened, and also had to walk behind her husband, who could not even get up. Harvey, honey, why do things happen like this? As if someone had jinxed her, she sat crying by his bedside. I'm sorry, he told her. Why should I forgive you? She fell on his chest. Because he couldn't die, but he condemned you to such agony. He kept thinking about it. What are you talking about? Come on, you die too. That's all I need. She started to tell him off. It was all very sad. How are Billy and Aurora doing? Harvey asked. They're doing fine, the woman said. Billy and Aurora had actually moved into the same house where Grandma used to live. They were planning their lives, wanting to be parents. Billy, let's go fishing, his wife told him. What are you doing fishing? It's cold outside, he laughed back at her. Why? We'll catch fresh fish. I'll make a pie, she promised him. But Billy didn't understand her zeal. You're so imaginative. He picked her up in his arms and spun her around. Aurora laughed. She loved her husband very much. Selena was glad that at least her youngest son was doing well. She went to visit them every day, bringing home cooked meals. Mom, I want to go to work, her son once told her. You what? What work with your health? The woman was afraid for him. You say the same thing. I do everything around the house, He pointed to the cabinets, which he had recently made himself. I don't know, you can try, she shrugged and turned away. The next day they went together to a man who ran a sawmill in their village. Hello, Robert, she approached him. Hello, he smiled. Listen, Fedyoshka wants to work. Will you take him on as a helper? Selena didn't like to ask, but she wanted to do something nice for her son. Of course, I always need workers. He was glad that the boy was willing to work. The next day, the boy came on shift. At first, there was a lot of confusion, but eventually he got into it. Selena, can't we at least put a cross on Barry? Her husband asked her. Why? She didn't understand. To have a place to come and remember, Harvey cried. I'll think about it. My mother's been more quiet lately. So, come on, let's try to get up. Now that there was no one in the house but her and her husband, she decided to help him. It was difficult, but they tried. And after 6 months, the man could sit up in bed. It made it very easy to take care of him. Billy and Aurora came to visit his parents over the weekend. They planned to heat the bathhouse and then all sit around the table together. The parents were happy when their children came to visit them. They tried to do everything for them. Right now, Harvey was sitting in bed, talking to Aurora. She worked in the library, read books, and told the man different interesting stories. Bath is ready. A young man entered the house. Son, you should at least eat, splashed his mother's hands. Lately, as he went to work, lost a lot of weight. He will succeed, he smiled. Everyone went to wash in order. Billy helped his mother and father. Everything in life seemed to be getting better. Kathy arrived, bringing her grandparents a granddaughter. She was a bright girl, and Selena liked to play with her. Her daughter-in-law asked her husband's parents to keep their daughter, at least until the end of the summer. She had to work, and the girl had nowhere to go. The old people agreed, and the house became noisy and cheerful. Veronica, get up. Her grandmother woke her up in the morning. There was a lot to do. The girl wrinkled her nose. She wasn't used to waking up so early. But she couldn't disobey her grandmother, so she stretched and got up. That's it, Harvey. I think happiness has come to our house. She sat by his bedside in the evening. Yes, Veronica was better, her husband confirmed. It was necessary to go and ask if the girl would be accepted to the local kindergarten, so Selena did. She was answered positively, so the girl had to be prepared for it. I'll go to town, buy some outfits for Veronica, Selena was going to. Be careful out there. Her husband was worried about her. Don't worry, she walked out of the house. Grandfather called his granddaughter. She came to him, climbed with her feet on the bed, and he began to read to her. Now, every morning Selena took her granddaughter to kindergarten. At first the girl cried, but then she got used to it. She had new friends. Katie hadn't been here for a long time, Selena said. The woman brought her daughter to them and never showed up again. Selena and Harvey didn't know where she was or what was going on. It's okay, the granddaughter is with us. That's the most important thing, Harvey smiled. Katie, when she arrived in town, immediately started looking for a job. She got a job, but her daughter was sick a lot, so she had to take sick days. Because of this, at work grumbled. The girl quit. When money became quite bad, she brought the girl to her grandparents. Hello, she came to one of the institutions. Come in, an imposing man sat at the table. I'd like to apply for a job with you. Katie behaved very modestly. I've looked at your documents. You're a good fit for us. He slid a paper to her to write an application. Katie couldn't believe how quickly she had gotten the job. She had written everything she needed to write. Tomorrow was her first day of work. Don't be late, the supervisor said. Deal, she said goodbye and left the office. At home, she prepared everything for tomorrow, took a bath, and lay down to rest. She was shown her workplace, told what to do, and by the evening of the first day, the boss called her to him. Richard Anatolievich, did you call? She looked into his office. Yes, Katie, come in. He showed her to a chair. She went through, sat down. She didn't know what she could have done on her first day to get to this office. Did I do something wrong? She didn't look at him. No, it's fine. It's just that when you left yesterday, I couldn't get over you all day. He just switched to you, without any warning. So, Katie didn't know what he was getting at. Why don't we go out together? The boss suggested it. Come on, she flared up. What's the big deal? You're young, you're single, I'm single. Why don't we try it? He said it all calmly. Good, Katie agreed because she thought if she said no, she'd be fired immediately. That's the deal, then I'll stop by in a couple hours. He stood up, walking to the door. As Kathy walked out, he took her hand and kissed it. See you later. She walked out of the office, her face red. What did they tell you in there? The girls in her office came over right away. Nothing, just talking about work, she lied. Understandably, it was obvious that her co-workers didn't believe her. Kathy prepared for the meeting. Richard was handsome, successful, and young. She didn't know what they would talk about. But when an hour had passed, the girl calmed down, and then she took her time. She was in the driveway when he pulled up in front of her. Hi, he got out of the car and opened the door for her. Already saying hello, she chuckled. Get in, he helped her in. Thank you. No one had ever looked after her like that before. They drove to a restaurant that was the only one in this town. Katie suddenly began to worry. What if he asked her to do something later, for this dinner? She didn't mind meeting Richard, but she knew absolutely nothing about him. Have a seat. He pulled back a chair and waited for Katie to sit down. Thank you. She never tired of thanking him today. The young man ordered wine, something from the food, then put the menu aside, sat and looked at his companion. What? She was embarrassed. Nothing, just looking at how beautiful you are. He took her hand in his. It feels good, she lowered her eyes. Let's drink to our future. He raised his glass. Good. Katie wondered at the man. They saw each other for the first time yesterday, and today they are already drinking to the future. At the restaurant, he asked her how she was living, why she wasn't married, and other things. I was married. She stopped on that word because a lump came to her throat. The girl was afraid to cry. Good. I see that you do not want to talk about it. The main thing is that now you are alone. He did not pester with more questions. They sat almost until closing time. After that, Richard wanted to take her home. You drank wine, didn't you? She was surprised he was going to drive. So what? Just a couple glasses. He smiled. Let's walk, and you can pick up the car later, she suggested. Okay, Richard agreed easily. They reached the house where the girl lived. Richard kissed her hand again, and they said goodbye until tomorrow. Wow, what a decent man. With those words, she walked up the stairs. In the morning, she went to work, and her boss was waiting for her. He had prepared a small bouquet of flowers for her. Why? She looked so that no one could see. Just take it. He put it in her hands. Katie was flattered. He had lifted her spirits this morning. Richard and Kathy started dating. 2 months later, after she got a job, the man suggested she move in with him and leave the firm. She hesitated for a long time, but she did what he said. You know, I need to talk to you. Kathy began one weekend. She and Richard had been living with him for 3 months. I'm listening to you very carefully. He came over and sat down next to her. I have a little daughter. She's at her grandparents' now, but I'd like to take her home. She watched the man's reaction. What daughter? He furrowed his eyebrows. Mine, Veronica, from her first husband. The girl began to worry. No, you and I will have our own daughter and son. There will be no Veronica here. Let her live at her grandmother's. You can visit her. He spoke in a stern tone, like at work. You can't do that. Katie knew she was going to cry. Why not? Some children are better off with their grandmothers than with their mothers, he said, because he had spent his entire childhood in the village with his grandmother. Well, Katie did not argue with him, but thought she would talk to him about it later. The woman missed her child very much, and after a month she could not stand it, and again brought up the subject. But Richard didn't even want to hear about it. He said that it was necessary to give birth to another. They lived together for a year, and then Katie left, at which point she came to Selena again. Wow, for the summer, her mother-in-law told her, "I'm sorry, there were just circumstances." Kathy crouched down in front of Veronica. The latter stood looking at the woman. "Hi, honey, have you forgotten me? After all, I'm your mom." She held out her hands. The girl looked at her grandmother and went to the woman. They hugged. After that they entered the house. There Katie told the woman everything. "Yes, things. Exhaled that one. You what now? Stay with us, at least for a few days." "No, I can't. I'm going home." Kathy looked at her watch. And Veronica, Selena, was scared. "Why? She's with me," stood and gave Katie a perplexed look. "How on earth can that be? Who does that? The girl has lived with us for so long, and now you're just taking her away." The mother-in-law began to cry. "Wait, but she's my daughter." She was standing there packing up the girl's things. "And you asked her. Maybe she doesn't want to go anywhere," practically screamed Grandma. At that moment Harvey woke up. "What's going on in there?" he shouted from the room. "Here, Katie is taking Veronica away," Selena said loudly. "Taking her away how?" I could hear that the man was agitated too. The woman sat down on a chair. How much more loss she would have to endure in her life. "Don't worry, we'll definitely come to you again." The daughter-in-law wanted to approach the woman, but the woman made a gesture that told Katie not to. "You go, and don't forget your grandparents." She hugged and kissed Veronica. At that moment, the girl cried loudly. She unhooked herself from her mother and ran to her grandfather. "What's going on? Were you turning her against me?" Katie started to get nervous. "What are you talking about? They're in your town with your rich fiancé. Are you completely crazy?" Selena was surprised at how her daughter-in-law had changed lately. "Don't insult me," she said. "Leave us the girl. You'll have more children," the woman begged. "No, she said that we will come to visit." She did not want to say more, took the bags, the girl, and they left the house. That night Harvey had a seizure. Selena called an ambulance and her husband was taken to a hospital in the city. "Mom, what happened?" Billy came in the next day after work. "Daddy, they took him away. He was sick." She sounded like she wasn't feeling well herself. "Are you all right?" Her son came closer to her. She wiped her face with her hand. "We should go see him." He sat down next to her. "Yes, I was thinking the same thing." She sat and looked at the beautiful tablecloth that was laid on the table. "Then in 2 days, on the weekend, we'll all go together." Billy was sure of what he was saying. At home he told Aurora everything. She just didn't understand how a woman could be so cruel. She knew that the grandparents were fond of their granddaughter, but no, she took her away anyway. "Billy, let's move to your mother's house. It would be easier for her." She thought about it more than once. "If you don't mind, we'll do that." He was glad that his wife was so kind. A day later, they were sitting together in the kitchen as they had done when they were children. "And if he dies?" Selena asked in a trembling voice. "What are you talking about?" Her son immediately came and sat at her side. "Why, there have already been 2 attacks." The woman could not help crying. Let's not talk. Tomorrow we will go to the hospital, and there everything will become clear," concluded the guy. "Okay," the mother agreed with him. In the morning, before the trip, Selena decided to go to the cemetery to her son. She sat there on a bench, cried and told what had happened. Afterward, she looked at Alex's picture for a long time, thinking that she should bring Barry here too. It was time to get to the station. Selena said goodbye to her son, kissed the picture, and went. "Where have you been so long?" Billy was afraid he'd be late. "Went to the cemetery. She saw that the bus was not yet. Why then was her son so nervous? But she knew that Billy did that a lot. They arrived, talked to the doctor. He walked them to the room. Harvey was lying on the bed. Everything they'd been trying to accomplish for so long was gone at once. The man lay there again and did not move. Harvey, his wife, came up to him and kissed him. "I'm sorry," he barked again, but now his speech was very slurred. "Mommy, don't be so upset." Billy hugged her. "I won't. I feel sorry for Harvey. He's a burden." She wiped away the tears that were almost gone. They were back at the station, waiting for the bus. They had to hire a car to get back, but it was no big deal. Harvey, his wife, entered the room. He turned his head and looked with such sad eyes that the sobs came to his throat again. "Leave me here. What do you need me for?" Harvey was crying now. "Don't you remember what we promised before the altar? For better and for worse, for better and for worse. For the rest of our days." She went over and put her arms around her husband. "You're a saint." He pressed his cheek against her. "I just love you." She tried to lift him up to transfer him to the stroller, but couldn't. She had to call Billy. The young man quickly managed all by himself. They called a car and drove to their village. Some time passed. It was winter outside. Aurora returned from work. "Mom," she turned to Selena. "Yes." She turned around. "God finally heard you." She stood with a sweet smile and put her hands on her stomach. "No way." She walked over to her sister-in-law and hugged her. "Just don't tell Fade. I want to tell him myself," the girl asked. "Okay, I'll go tell Grandpa." She headed for the room where Harvey was lying. Now that they had a stroller, she could walk with him. "Honey," she sat down on the bed and put her hand on his chest. "You're going to be a grandfather again soon." This was happy news. Harvey was getting worse every day. Selena left him. She was cooking dinner and humming to herself. Billy came home from work. She looked at him and smiled. "Go to your wife," his mother directed him. "What's the matter?" He was immediately alert. "Go and find out for yourself." She couldn't wait to see how he would react when he learned the truth. "I love you." She heard it from behind the closed door. "Congratulations, son." Mom hugged him and kissed him. With Alex and Barry gone, all the motherly love went to the youngest son. It was decided to bake pies, make the family's favorite dish, all gather around the table and celebrate the occasion. "I'll help." The girl came out of the room. "Thank you," thanked her mother. "You're welcome." The daughter-in-law was not difficult to do household chores. But when I was pregnant, could not even go to the table. It was so bad. Selena remembered how it was with her. "Don't remember, you'll feel bad again." The girl hugged her mother-in-law. "You're good. How lucky Billy is." Her eyes became sad. There was so much to cook that it didn't even fit on the table. But the two hostesses made sure they could fit everything in. After that, the man was put in a wheelchair and brought to the table. Billy came in. They all sat down. "Thank you, my dear, for despite everything, you remained as kind and caring." He looked at his mother and drank his tea. "Speak words to your wife. You'll always have time for me," Selena asked her son. "And she will get it too." "Wait, by seniority." He smiled. The guy was so happy. "I can't sit any longer," groaned Harvey. "Okay." The mother raised her eyes to her son. The latter understood. He got up and carried his father back to bed. After that, he went back to his favorite women. "Well, now it was the turn of my most beautiful and beloved Aurora." He looked at his wife with so much love. "And I adore you." They drew to each other, kissed. "No, listen to me. I always knew I'd have a beautiful wife, and I did. And now I'm gonna have a baby. I believe that you will be a good hostess and mother." He again reached to the cheek of his beloved, kissed. "That's it. That's enough now." Aurora couldn't when Selena saw all of this. Okay. Billy laughed and started to cut the pie. And at that moment his mother took the cauldron out of the oven. After a good sit-down, everyone dispersed. Selena was talking to Harvey about something, and Billy and Aurora went to their room. "Son, get up. It's time to go to work." Billy's mom knocked on Billy's room. "I am all ready." She heard his voice and went to prepare breakfast. Everything was going well. The daughter-in-law was going to work. She had nothing left before her maternity leave. Billy was working. His boss was praising him. His mother couldn't help but be pleased. Except Harvey was fading from day to day. "I'm not well. Everything hurts," her husband often said. Then Selena would give him a shot. "I understand everything, dear," stroked his wife on the head. "Hurry up," exhaled the man. "Don't," Selena snuggled up to him. "Let him be like this. But he's home. Here he is lying talking to her." She forbade herself to even think of anything bad. Months passed. Aurora was already on maternity leave. Soon the family was going to have a baby. Selena had prepared a corner in the children's room for the baby to be brought in, and everything was already in place. The daughter-in-law started packing for the hospital. "Are you sure you've packed everything?" The mother-in-law was worried. "Yes," she pointed to the bag. To make sure, Selena started to check everything. He and Billy together sent the girl from the station. The son wanted to go with his wife, but his mother talked him out of it, said she'd go when it happened. A week and a half passed. A woman came from the post office saying that Aurora had given birth. She contacted her parents and they asked her to tell Selena. "Billy." Mom ran into the room. "Happy news, you're a daddy." He started running, jumping, then packed up and went to his wife's house. They were gone for a few days, and then they came back. Selena had already notified all the neighbors that they would soon have a party. Selena couldn't look at the baby. He looked just like her eldest son. "Mom, did you see? He's just like Alex," Billy immediately told her. Don't tell me," she stopped him. "Good, I understand how hard it is for you," her son agreed with her. The woman overcame herself. She helped her daughter-in-law in everything. And the girl's parents often came too. Selena, when she took Harry in her arms, she immediately went back many years. There, she gave birth to her first boy, sat and told him stories. "Mommy," she shuddered. Aurora came up to her. "Oh yes," she handed the boy to her. After that, the girl would go to feed him and put him to bed. "How's the milk?" The mother-in-law was worried. So far so good. Paula liked that the woman was worried about her. Billy continued to work. Now he was trying to bring in more money. He took on extra work. He had to meet the cars that brought in logs and boards. "Aren't you overstretching yourself?" His mother was worried about him. "No, you're not. It's a little more difficult, but I handle everything," and he wasn't fooling. That afternoon he left for work in the morning. Harry was crying hard. Aurora couldn't tear herself away from him to see her husband off. "Billy," happily, shouted his wife from the room. "I love you," her husband answered her. "Son, wait," Selena wanted to go over to him and hug him. "What are you all doing today? As if I'm leaving forever," laughed the young man. "Come on," the mother frowned. "Okay, Dad, bye." He never addressed his father. He answered nothing, only breathed heavily. Billy came to the sawmill. He took the tasks that needed to be done today. 2 cars were due. It was 2 hours away, so the guy went to do the main job. He had to saw some long lumber. "You working?" The owner stopped by. "Yeah," he looked up at him. "Well, don't forget about the cars," the man reminded him. Billy hadn't forgotten about it. He finished and went to the gate. He saw that the cars were on their way. All that remained was to meet them, show them where to stand, and then pile up the boards. Billy had everything calibrated. He waved to the driver, who followed his directions. "Hi," he opened the doors and shouted to the guy. "Drive through." Billy hurried him along. The car was parked where it was supposed to be. Billy walked to the side, started to open it. There was no telling who was to blame for the situation, but for some reason the boards were loose. Whoever had assembled them hadn't thought of that. They immediately started falling out of the back of the truck. Billy didn't have time to get away. He was crushed, and the boards kept falling. Jesus, boy. The driver was awake, and he ran over to where it had just happened. What's going on? The man in the second car came over. Get Robert. The first one told him about the chief. Everyone started running, fussing. Finally, something stopped falling out of the car. Robert was already here by then. They scattered the fallen boards. Billy was unconscious. Call an ambulance, the man ordered, and went into the office. He sat at his desk, clutching his head. How could this have happened? What would he say to Selena now? How would he look her in the eye? The ambulance took a long time to arrive, but it was here. Billy was loaded onto a stretcher. He was alive. In the car, they began to administer first aid. But after a few kilometers out of the village, the guy stopped breathing. His injuries were incompatible with life. Bring Harry here, Selena said to her sister-in-law. Now, will you go for a walk? The girl asked. Yes, now I'll dress Harvey, and we can go out for a while, was the usual conversation. Selena, Aurora, a neighbor ran into the house. What are you? Someone died. Looked at him, woman. Yes, Fedka. He couldn't catch his breath. What are you saying? He was at work. The mother was still tending to the baby. And died there. The boards piled up, clarified the guest. That can't be. Selena almost dropped the baby from her arms. The man was still talking when Aurora came into the kitchen. Is it true? She looked at him with big eyes with tears in them. Son. She heard the woman moan from Harvey's bedroom, followed by some wheezing. She couldn't move. Mom, Uncle Harvey's not feeling well, Aurora shouted. But for Selena, nothing existed anymore. She heard and saw everything, but felt nothing. As Aurora came toward her and began to shout, her mother-in-law flinched. Your husband is dying, the girl shouted at the whole house. So, what I want too. Why should we live now if there is no one around? No one, she repeated. Aurora put Harry in the crib and herself ran to her father-in-law. But what could she do? Harvey turned his head toward the kitchen where his wife sat. He could no longer speak, only stare. At the last moments, Selena came to her senses. She stood up and walked over to her husband. I'm sorry, the man exhaled. He put his hand on his wife's shoulder as she leaned over him. He closed his eyes and he was gone. No, Harvey. The woman screamed as if she was being cut. Mom, Aurora was also having a hard time, but someone had to remain adequate in this situation. That evening, Selena sat on a chair in the center of the kitchen, a glass of sedative in her hands. Mom, the girl approached her quietly. But there was not a sound from the woman. She just froze. It seemed that she did not even breathe. We have a lot to do tomorrow, Aurora continued. And how can you be so calm? With only one lip, she spoke in the voice of a mother who had lost everyone. I have a child. If I put my hands down, who will be by his side? I advise you to pull yourself together too, she said in a calm tone. That night was the worst night of the woman's life. She lay on the bed and looked up at the ceiling. Robert came in. He said something, offered compensation. What's the point of all this now if you can't bring people back? In the morning, the real preparations began. Both father and son were to be brought in the next day. Selena did everything on automatic. She saw how hard it was for her daughter-in-law. She had to pull herself together. And so, her loved ones stood in the house. They looked as if they were alive, just asleep. Harry was crying. Selena and Aurora were crying too. Come on, there are people coming, the woman called out to Aurora. The girl's mother was here. She was helping with the baby. No one from the village could believe that this could have happened. Almost the entire population was in the cemetery. Saying goodbye, the mother threw a handful of earth. And then, tears sprang from her eyes. They hadn't been for so many years, and now she couldn't stop. Don't cry, Aurora hugged her. You still have grandchildren. But there was no way those words could soothe Selena's heart. She looked at all the people gathered. She realized that everyone was grieving. But tomorrow, they would simply forget that these two people had once lived. She returned home. It was cold and empty. No one here. Aurora said she would go to her mother's for a while and then come back. Her mother-in-law realized that the wench was about to move out on her. Why would she want to live with a strange woman when she had her own mother a couple of houses away? The woman didn't want to eat or drink. She just lay on the bed where her husband had lain for several years. "Mom," she heard Aurora come in. "I'm here," she said, but never got up. "We came. Put the grandson to his grandmother." "Okay, will you go to your parents now?" This worried her most of all. "Why do we have to live together?" Aurora did not look into the woman's eyes. I knew it. The tears flowed down her cheeks again. "No need to be upset. We live next door. I will come often, and you can come to us even every hour," the girl reassured her. Selena patted the girl's hand. She realized that she was still young and could build another life. Today the girl stayed here. She was afraid to leave her mother-in-law alone, and in a few days, as she said, she moved to her parents. Selena did not have any classes left. For herself, she did not want to do anything. She spent all her time in the cemetery. There was one grave. Her mother still brought a picture of her middle son. "Well, my darlings, now you are all together. Why am I left here all alone?" She spoke to her closest people. Selena, a local worker, came up to her. "Wow, you scared her." She looked around. "I see you here every day. I thought I'd come over." He was looking at pictures of the people who were buried here. "What else am I supposed to do?" She was crying. "Go to church. Pray for their souls," advised the one. "You'll see, it will be easier." The woman thought that was a good idea, and why hadn't she thought of it before? She got up and walked towards the temple. There she really felt better. From that day on, she started coming here every day, praying. Not good. Her sister came to her one day. "Yes, my heart is breaking from the pain in my chest," Selena confessed to her. "I understand." She closed her eyes. "I pray, I put candles on, I get relief." It was true. Slowly the woman came back to life. She realized that she had a grandson who also needed a grandmother. Now she had another address where she visited very often. Harry was very happy to have a grandmother. If Aurora's mother worked, Selena could walk with him for days on end. "Is everything all right?" her daughter-in-law asked her every time. Yes, and even though it wasn't true, no one had to know about it. A year had passed since her husband's death. Selena went to the cemetery. She wanted to stop at the store as usual, buy a wake, and then go to her family. On the way, she met Aurora. "Aren't you going to the cemetery?" she asked her daughter-in-law. "We have already been there since morning." Selena saw that the girl was in a hurry. "Are you in a hurry?" she decided to ask her. "Yes, I have to get to work while someone is there. If you could take this time with Harry, I would really appreciate it." The girl looked at her. "Of course, what are you saying? You should have brought him right away," smiled Selena. She didn't need to be begged to take a walk with her grandson. Aurora left. She was gone for a long time. Selena began to look at her watch. She thought it would be too late to get to the cemetery. "I'm sorry I was late." Her daughter-in-law came up behind her. "It's okay. I don't care when I get there." The woman went where she was going. She entered the fence, and almost immediately, the man who had told her about the church came up to her. "Can I sit here with you for a while?" he asked. Yes, she didn't mind having someone to keep her company. Selena herself started to clean up the graves. She did everything and only then sat down. All this time the man had been silent. "Thought you might want to talk." She was surprised by that. "At first I thought that too, and then I realized you don't have time to talk." He was looking at the picture of the woman's husband again. "Okay, could you go to your room? I need to talk to my husband and children," the woman asked. "Okay," have a good day." He walked between the graves. It was getting dusk outside, but Selena didn't think of going home. "My loved ones, how come I outlived everyone?" She sat on the bench and stroked her husband's portrait because he was the outermost. Out of the corner of her eye, Selena saw someone walking in the distance. At first it was scary, but then she thought it was the man who had recently left her. "No, don't think, I'm not scared," she grinned. What was there to be afraid of? Selena heard the cemetery gate creak. It should have been oiled long ago, but no one had gotten around to it. The woman turned in that direction, saw her acquaintance. Then who's there? She looked over to where she saw another person. A chill ran down her spine. She started to get ready to go home. Enough of this. There would be time tomorrow. She would come again. Selena got up from the bench, gathered her things, checked to make sure she hadn't forgotten anything, bent down, kissed all the pictures. When she straightened up, she almost lost her mind. There was a man standing in front of her. She fell senseless right there, on the graves of the most dear people. The woman woke up, but was in no hurry to open her eyes. First, she was going over in her head what had happened today. She was getting ready, and then he appeared. Selena opened her eyes. She was in her house. She heard someone in the kitchen. She remembered that person, would recognize him out of a million others, even though he was mutilated. But she had to be sure. "Who's there?" she shouted. Well, finally awake, a man came into the room, his face all scarred and like a burn mark. "Barry." She rushed over to him. Her heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it was going to jump out of her chest. "Mom," he was hugging the woman. "Where have you been? How are you? What happened to you?" She kissed his face and bombarded him with questions. "Wait, let's eat something. I'm so hungry." He sat down at the table. Now, it was as if the mother was alive. She was ready to roll mountains. Something was already ready, but Selena didn't stop. When everything was on the table, she sat down next to her son. "Well, you what? I understand that everything is interesting, I'll tell you." The mother seemed that he did not go anywhere and did not go anywhere. "When the telegram came that you were missing, I immediately said that nothing and no one we will not bury," said the woman. "Consider me practically dead. Saw my picture there." He kept eating. "I'll clean everything up. It's just that you've been gone so long that I've already stopped believing." Selena admired her son. She thought that the prayers she was now reciting had helped her. They sat with Barry until the night before, him walking around the house, remembering what had happened. Then he went out into the yard. "Come on, I'll introduce you to my nephew." His mother didn't know what else to offer him. "Okay." He started to dress. "Aurora, are you home?" The woman knocked on the window. Yes, she looked out. She noticed the man with the disfigured face, surprised. "Do you want to come in, or do you want to come in?" Before coming in, the mother asked. "I'll be right out," the girl hurried. She gathered the child, and in a few minutes she was already on the street. "Hello," Barry greeted her. "Hello." She looked at his scars. "Scared?" He touched his hand. "No." Aurora turned to Selena with a question in her eyes. "Didn't recognize it?" the latter asked. She was glowing with happiness. "No." The surprise on the girl's face didn't go away. "Barry is mine," the woman informed her. "What?" She was so happy, she started hugging him right away. "Let's go," Selena urged them on. Barry took the stroller and drove it down the street. In the house they talked for a long time, but everyone wondered only one thing, where he disappeared for so long. "I hate to remember, but you'll have to tell me everything. It was scary." He lowered his head. "If you're not ready for it now, then you don't have to tell. When you realize that you have to do it, you'll talk it out." His mother came to him. "Okay, let's sleep together tonight, and then we'll see." He looked at Aurora. He and Harry stayed a little longer. At first the boy was afraid of his scary uncle, but then he was eager to take him in his arms. In the morning, Barry went out into the yard, where everything was in disrepair. He flooded the bathhouse and began to remodel the place. Mother saw it all. She sat and smiled. That night Selena couldn't sleep. She didn't believe it could be. So there is a God. Because he heard her mother's suffering, her son had returned. Mother, make some tea. Make it strong, Barry said. She went straight to the stove. It'll be ready in a minute, she shouted out the window. Aurora and her son were visiting again today. They were sitting at the table. What happened to Billy? The man asked. He saw that after his question, the girl was ready to burst into tears. Selena walked over to her daughter-in-law and hugged her. I'm sorry. Barry looked into her eyes. She wiped away the tears that had not yet rolled down her lashes. Okay, I'll tell you everything, he exhaled. Selena sat down next to him. She felt sorry for her son. You saw me off then, I left. First, there was a training camp, but not for long. And then we were brought there, he said, and he seemed to be immersed in his memories. Forward, the senior officer shouted to them. Come on, did you see what's going on? Barry muttered under his breath. He saw the guys running ahead of him, just falling as the bullets hit them. Barry was lying in a ditch. He saw the cover. Thought he could take cover for a while. What was the point of getting shot at? He felt someone grab him by the scruff of the neck. Don't lie here, the commander yelled in his face. Yeah, the fear was stronger than all the yelling and everything else. He made his way, but with great caution. In boot camp, when the other guys were getting to know each other, Barry sat alone. He didn't want to make friends here, so he wouldn't lose anyone later. In the evening in the tent, they discussed what losses they had suffered and what to do next. Barry was silent. He had regretted coming here more than once, but for now there was no turning back. In the evening, he was put out as a sentry. He wanted to sleep badly, but he endured it. Barry saw some lights in the distance, but he didn't think much of it. Everything all right? The commander came to him in the morning. It was cold, his uniform was wet from dew, he was shaking. Everything was fine. Barry didn't know if he'd slept the night before or not. This was the day his boys were going to attack. He saw a pop coming toward their tent. It was strange to see. The bishop went inside. Prayer began. You stay, the older man said to Dmitri. There were a few others with him. The soldiers left. There were only a few people left in the tent, as well as the bishop. Suddenly, there was a whistle and darkness. After that moment, Barry didn't know what happened. He woke up somewhere. He didn't understand anything. His whole body ached. The guy just lay there with his eyes open. You awake? He heard a man's voice with an accent. Who are you? The guy asked. Nobody, laughed the man. Barry tried to sit up, but he couldn't do it. What's wrong with me? He felt his face. It was covered in rags. You're dead, said the same voice. How? His head was a mess. You were in the tent when the explosion happened. I don't know how you did it, but everyone was blown apart and you were thrown far away. He walked over to where the guy was lying. That's rough. Barry fidgeted on the bed. Don't move. You'll hurt yourself, he warned him. The young man continued to lie there. He tried to remember who he was, how he'd gotten here in the first place, but something was going on in his head. It seemed that here it was. The thought came, but immediately ran away. Dad, is he awake? He heard the girl's voice. Yes, come and see, he answered her. A pretty young woman approached Barry. Well, how are you? She leaned over him and started checking his bandages. I don't know. He wanted to shrug but couldn't. You have multiple fractures, burns on your face, and shrapnel wounds, she mumbled. How did I survive? It was a mystery. Thank her, the man approached. What? Barry was surprised. Daughter always pities everyone. Who can help immediately does it. And you even dragged you to the house. It was heard that the father was not pleased. What's your name? She sat next to him. Me. He was silent and rolled his eyes. Don't you remember? She shook her head. I don't know. The boy was confused. After such injuries, it was to be expected. She touched his forehead, lifted his head, looked at the wound on the back of his head. Will I remember? He was still trying to catch his thoughts. Perhaps she didn't know it herself. After that, the girl nursed Barry every day. "Daddy, he should be given a name," the girl said. "What do you like?" He came up to her. "I don't know, maybe Isa." She looked at him to see if he'd say yes or no. "Okay." He pressed his lips together and went somewhere else. "Your name's Isa." She went back to Barry. "What? How did you know?" He twitched. "I made it up," she laughed. "What about you?" After he moved a little, his whole body ached so badly that tears came out of his eyes. "Cindy," she blushed, but the guy didn't see it. Every day she sat next to him, telling him something, showing him pictures. Barry just lay there. He never remembered anything. A month passed. He could sit up on his own, but Cindy still helped him with everything. "Why don't you get up?" 2 months later, she offered to help him up. She brought a rake from the street, which the boy stepped on, with her standing on the other side. Barry gathered all the strength he had left in him, tensed up, and stood up. His legs were in a lot of pain. "I can't." He sat back down on the bed. "Okay, bear with it some more," she agreed. And again, all the days they are together, she tells and he listens. The girl was very pretty. The guy didn't understand what she was doing here, so he decided to ask her about it. "My mom was very sick, so my brother decided to become a doctor and help her. Got in, went to school, helped us the whole time. After graduation, he came back to do everything for the woman he loved the most. At that moment, I also went to medical school, but I had time to finish only 2 courses when my father came to pick me up and told me that my mother was dying. I came back to take care of her. We could not save her, she died. After that, my brother left. From that moment, we did not see him. Dad was having a hard time. That's why I stayed with him. I thought if I left like my brother, Dad would get sick too," Cindy cried. "It's okay." Barry didn't know what to do to support her. "It's okay. These moments of weakness come often, but I'm hanging in there." She smiled and wiped away her tears. "I'm ready," Barry said suddenly. "For what?" The girl was surprised. "To stand up," he said confidently. "You're in pain, aren't you?" She realized that he might not get up for some time. "So what? I'll manage." He was so energized by the girl's strength that he was ready for anything. "Hold on." She put her shoulder to his side. It hurt a lot, but he stood up. Cindy looked up at him. She could see him clenching his teeth and breathing hard, but standing. "You'll be running soon," she promised him. "Why did you decide to help me?" He wondered. After the explosion, the militants ran to finish off the survivors. "I spotted you near the bushes, dragged you there. They didn't notice, and then I dragged you home." She didn't look at him. "How did you do it?" "I'm thin but not light." It was true. On a piece of tarp, it was hard, but she did it. "My relatives are probably looking for me," Barry suggested. "You don't remember anything at all?" She asked this every time. "You know, it's like a thought comes to mind and it's not there." He couldn't explain it. They talked like that for hours. That's what they did. When 6 months had passed, Barry was already getting up normally, walking with a limp, but it was already progress. He helped the girl in her business, and he didn't neglect his father either. "You're a good boy," Cindy said. "Look, if it weren't for you," he'd shut up and just stare into her beautiful eyes. Once they were home alone, which was often. His father was away all the time. "I've been living here for a year now. Why don't you try looking for my relatives?" he asked her. What to look for? She was already thinking about it. He touched her cheek, where there was a terrible scar. "Don't." She took his hand and pulled it away from her face. He held it in his hand, kissed her fingers. Thanked them for making it right. Barry was so gentle. That was it. She was like a tomato. Took her hand away. "I like you," the guy admitted. "Because there's no one else here. There's nothing to compare you to, she laughed. Do you think your father will agree to let you marry me? He asked the girl a question. I don't know, I have to ask. She turned and looked at the front door. I'll do it today, the boy promised. When the man returned, Barry challenged him to a conversation. Daughter, do you want it too? He inquired of her. Yes, she was ashamed to admit it to her father. I don't know, he's orthodox, her father doubted. Then the boy and the girl decided to live together like that. The father himself blessed them. You're so good, Barry said to his as he called his wife. And you, Allah sent you to me, she purred in his ear. They still loved to talk, an activity that occupied most of their time. Now Barry and Cindy were taking a walk. They lived in a beautiful place, lots of greenery and trees. I'm so scared of losing you, the girl kept saying. Don't be afraid, as long as you're around, it won't happen, she assured him. And rushed towards the house. What happened? His father saw him. Cindy, she's been shot, cried Barry. At home, it became clear that the girl was no longer alive. Allah, screamed Barry. At one point, he got a bad headache and grabbed his head with his hands. And then, he suddenly realized clearly that his name was Barry. What? The man looked at him. He was crying too. I remembered everything. He jumped to his feet. Afterward, we buried her, and I started thinking about how to get home, but I couldn't do anything. Then my beloved's father volunteered to help me. I don't know who he arranged it with, but in a few days I was escorted to the territory of the United States. After that, I got here on my own. I went to the cemetery to tell my brother that I was alive. I came back, and there I saw you, and I approached you. The boy finished telling his story. He looked up. Aurora was sitting and crying. There were tears in her mother's eyes too. Honey, how much you had to go through, but you're home, and that's the most important thing. She did not come to him. He already understood that she was hugging him mentally. What a beautiful story, Aurora said. It was late. Harry was asleep in her arms. Would you like to stay? Selena asked her. Yes, she nodded. No one slept that night except the baby. The mother was still digesting the story she had heard from her son today. Aurora thought that the boys had to go through a lot, and Barry himself, when he remembered it all, could not calm down. Why is life so unfair? They had just found each other, and everything was cut short in an instant. Mom, we should probably go. The girl woke up early in the morning. Wait, I'll make breakfast now. She got out of bed. They went out. In the kitchen, Barry was already sitting at the table. How did you sleep? He asked. He looked tired. It was obvious that he hadn't slept. He didn't. His mother didn't elaborate. They ate breakfast together, and then Aurora got ready to go home. Shall I walk her home? Barry looked after her. Good, she wondered why. They walked out of the gate together, Selena watching them from the window. She saw her son looking at the girl. You remind me of her, he admitted. Who? The Aurora didn't understand at first. Cindy, he said the name with great affection. In what way? She wanted to know. I don't know, behavior, hair. He touched her long braids. You are good. The girl smiled at the corners of her lips. They reached her house, stopped. Will you come tonight? He cared what she answered. Yes, she looked at her son. And let's go for a walk alone. Let the grandmothers take care of Misha. He was afraid to say it, but risked it. Okay, she agreed quickly. Barry wanted to jump for joy. He went back to his mother's house and waited till evening. Aurora was waiting for him outside. Where are you going? His mother was surprised when he started to pack. I'm going for a walk. He opened the door and stepped out. What took so long? The girl was embarrassed to be standing here alone. I'm sorry, he walked over to her. The mother was watching them from the window. She thought nothing and didn't want to say anything. If they succeed, the girl will return to our family. Selena approached the icons. Would you go out with someone like me? He walked and looked in front of him. Why wouldn't I? She glanced at him. Well, I'm not exactly normal. He put a finger to his temple. It's okay. She took his hand and pulled it away. Do you know how much you look like her? He took her hand in his and started kissing it. Barry, stop. It's still early. She pulled her hand away. Okay, sorry. They walked down to the river, sat down on the bank. Will you move back in with us? He asked her. I don't even know if that would be comfortable. She watched the fine ripples appear on the water. Do you want to live in grandmother's house? He noticed the wind was picking up too. We used to live there with Billy, she said sadly. Billy's gone, but you're alive. You have a baby to raise. I'll help you, he promised. Okay, I think we're rushing things. She stood up, realizing. It's gonna start raining. Run, it's going to start raining. He grabbed her hand and pulled her towards the house. Wait, I'm going to fall. She couldn't break free. Barry stopped. Already slower, they managed to run away before the rain. He left her outside the house. He went to his own place. Do you want to go out with Aurora? From the doorstep, his mother asked. Do you mind? He froze. No, we have to go to the cemetery, talk to Billy, so he won't be offended, the woman said in all seriousness. You're serious? Barry tried to smile, but the scars prevented it from doing so fully. Of course, I generally for every trifle go there and consult. She poured boiling water into mugs. The next day, Selena, Barry and Aurora came to the cemetery. They sat on a bench, their mother talking to the monuments. Suddenly, a man Selena already knew appeared. Hello, he took a seat with them. The family responded to the greeting. Next, they talked to Barry. The man marveled at the miraculous return. For years I've been looking at your picture here, and now here you are, sitting next to me alive. The man gestured vigorously. And come and visit us tonight. The young man invited him. If you invite, I will definitely be. He looked at Selena. Why did you invite him? On the way back, his mother spoke sternly. Did you see how he looks at you? It was clear to the son. Come on, she started laughing loudly. Why? More years allowed. Why not feel happy in her old age? Barry said all this and believed that his mother deserved it. In the evening, Sam came to them. He brought a bunch of flowers, handed them to Selena. Do you know how many years I've watched you suffer? They're on those graves. He asked her in a whisper. No, she was surprised, because she herself had only recently met him. Well, let's go to the table. The man could see that the young ones were already interested in what the adults were talking about. There were casual conversations at the table. No one brought up the war or the dead. They sat and lived the moment that was happening now. Selena, I like you. Let's communicate. Sam looked at her and waited for an answer. I don't even know. She shifted her gaze to the children. Agree, her son prompted her. Good. She as a girl started to blush. After these sit-downs, Barry and Aurora started dating, as did Sam and Selena. Old men already, and yet, the woman knew that the village was already starting to talk about them. Ignore anyone. He didn't care about the gossip. A year and a half had passed since Barry's return. As he wanted, together with Aurora, They moved into the house where his grandmother used to live. It was a decision made to keep his mother and her boyfriend from living together. "Dad, are we going out tonight?" Harry ran up to him. "Sure, dear." He lifted the kid up and put him on his shoulders. "Will you marry me?" He whispered to his beloved. "Am I definitely Aurora to you, or do you live with me and represent her?" It was a very important question. "What are you saying? Of course you are you. My favorite." He liked to take her in his arms and twill. She was so fragile that he wanted to protect her from everyone. "Okay, I agree." She kissed his cheek where the scar was. Barry was always embarrassed afterward. He thought she was disgusted by it, but she purposely showed him it was okay. "You know I don't like that." He was embarrassed. "It's okay, love." She held up her hands and ruffled Harry's hair. "Mummy," the man shouted. "Love, you're ours." Mother was happy. "Daddy," the boy shouted. "Yep, I'm your real daddy." They agreed that when Harry grows up, they'll be sure to tell him about his real father. In the meantime, let him grow up knowing that his own uncle would temporarily be his father. "Are you ready, love?" He wanted to look into the room, but she wouldn't let him. "Wait, I'll tell you when I'm ready." She put on a white dress. They stood, so beautiful. Finally, Aurora smiled an open smile. She had a ring sparkling on her finger and a trustworthy man by her side. Barry looked out into the hall. His mother and Sam looked as if they had gotten younger when they started living together. Selena went to church and the cemetery that way. She would tell her sons and Harvey how they lived, what was going on in the house. "You don't mind, do you?" she asked Sam, who was usually waiting for her at the gate. "No, if you feel like doing it, I'll never mind." He loved the woman.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.